Surprise!
We're taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us for an incredible higher education marketing and enrollment management conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is
amazing.
Thousands of copies have been sold across the United States and the world. You can pick up your copy today on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you here again and again and again. I say that every time, but I really will never stop because Elvin Freitas, co-founder of this podcast, will never stop scheduling me, no matter what I ask. I even asked for a day off, and then he says, Joe, you got two. You got two to do, buddy. And so I try to fit him in because there is no other podcast that I know of in higher ed where we're going to have these conversations at scale and bring some of the most important voices, if not the most important voices in higher education, to the microphone, voices that you don't hear every day. That's why we do this. That's why the EdUp microphone is unlike any other in higher ed. And I smile because I get through that whole intro that I do, and then I'm like, I got to get to my guest co-host. I feel like he's up in his game now. I think this is the second time now we've had him as guest co-host. The first time I think he was just using the computer monitor sound. Now it looks like he's upgraded to earphones. Perhaps there's a microphone coming soon. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest co-host and yours, he is Dr. Bruce Kush. He's the president of Ensign College in Utah. Bruce, what's going on? How are you?
Hey, it's great to be here. And by the way, there is a microphone. You just can't see it on the camera.
I love this.
This is lunacy.
That's right. No, we're only going to have fun here at the EdUp Experience. He's got a mic. He's got everything. Bruce, so you had fun the first time or else you wouldn't have come back, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation today.
You know, what our guest doesn't know, and maybe she does now, but at first she didn't know that through this long list, when Bruce, you said, I'll come back and I'll co-host. We gave you a list. I think there were maybe 50 guests on it. We said, pick which ones, people you want to interview. And you selected this guest and you said, I want to interview her. And that's just a powerful thing for our guest to understand, is that you hand selected her off this list because you're really excited about this conversation. So not to put any pressure on her now, for her to know that you hand selected her to talk to her, but here she is. I'm going to bring her in now. Ladies and gentlemen, she's got a big smile on her face, which I already like her a lot right now. Ladies and gentlemen, her name is Chris Montagnino. I got that right. She's the Vice President of Online Operations at Champlain College. Christa, Chris, how are you?
I am doing wonderful.
You're confusing me because you're by Chris, but you have Christa on your screen, but we're going to call you Chris.
Okay, fabulous.
How's it going?
It is going wonderful. Very excited for today. Thank you so much for hosting me. I love any chance I get to have a conversation about online higher ed. I'm excited. So thank you.
So you have just a little tiny bit of experience in online higher ed, right? Give us your background, because I find your background to be very awesome. So where'd you start and where are you today?
Thank you. So it's 25 years of experience in online higher ed, working student focus. So I started at University of Phoenix and spent 15 years with them and in many different markets with them. So as I kind of advanced, I got to see a fair amount of the country. And so I feel like I always say to people, that was like the foundation that I got of understanding, where we need to meet students where they're at in order to be successful. And I also feel like that was grounding for always thinking about, as I moved into leadership, what is the best interest of the students. After serving with University of Phoenix for 15 years, I then went to Herzing University, which was fantastic because they had kind of gone through pretty significant growth right before I joined them. So being able to come in and help them with some of the operational pieces, best practices, and all of that. And I love that experience because we both had the traditional campus in Madison, Wisconsin, as well as online for Herzing. And then came along a colleague that I used to work with, mentioned to their president, who was president of Excelsior College, you've got to meet this person, because the president was looking for someone to run Educators Serving Educators, which was kind of an education consulting organization run at that time through Excelsior College, as well as to be a vice president over extended education. And I met John Ebersol, who was an amazing person, a visionary. And he just made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It was just wonderful working at Excelsior for a number of years. And then I went to academic partnerships, which was like, I got to take everything from all of these different institutions, you know, for-profit institutions, nonprofit institutions, and then help my state universities. So we work with predominantly state schools, and we help them kind of develop, research, create, and then launch online programs for them. And so I was over the Northeast school partnerships that we had, and absolutely love that experience. But then again, Alex Hernandez, the president of Champlain in November, made me an offer again. I couldn't refuse. And I just fell in love with the culture. And I always say, like, oh, this is my favorite job. This is my favorite job. And people think I'm not authentic, but really, like, each time it gets better and better, I feel like. And so now I couldn't be happier. Like, this is home, being at Champlain. It's the best of all of the worlds and such an innovative team. So I'm having a blast. It's been 9 months.
Amazing.
I love it. I love the story for a couple of reasons. Number one, come from for-profit higher education, and you make your way, which the fascinating part is you go from for-profit to another for-profit that converted to a nonprofit, Herzing, right? Which not a lot of people go through that little conversion. They'll disallow those conversions now unless you're going through a merger. Then you go to university partnership. So you step out of higher ed and you go to a higher ed adjacent to an OPM, which, you know, is even more the dark side. And then you come back into a nonprofit. And, you know, there are those within higher education, and I say this from experience because I did 15 years in for-profit too, where you can look your nose down at somebody who comes from a for-profit entity or from for-profit higher ed if you've only worked in nonprofits, and think that there's some kind of ulterior motive. And I always say, nah, we serve students the same, in fact, probably better at times. And we were just trained in business. That was part of the training, was business training, profit and loss and expense management, and you don't run with deficits. And all of a sudden, now, as we take a step forward, Chris, you know that so many of our colleagues that came from for-profit higher ed are being hired to help turnarounds now for nonprofits that are running deficits, because we weren't used to that, right? Talk about your experience of shifting from a for-profit to a nonprofit and some of the things you've experienced.
Yeah, so I don't feel there has been a lot of differences between institutions. You know, you look at University of Phoenix, Herzing, Excelsior, and then now Champlain, because I think what it comes down to, right, is mission. So if you have the mission, what does the tax status necessarily have to do with that? And that concept that because maybe we as a family are looking to make a profit for, you know, a better way of life for our kids, whether it's a local restaurant you frequent that is also looking to make a profit, why would there be an assumption that because an entity is looking to make a profit, it would automatically mean they don't have the best interests of their students at heart? So I feel like it comes down to looking at the mission. And then, of course, like many academics, right, we need primary research before we level judgments. And so I feel like I've been gifted that I've had this experience, you know, with so many different entities. And I can tell you that as long as the institution is upholding their mission, you know, that's what's important, not the label of the tax status.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you for saying that. And Bruce, you said you didn't have many questions today. Is that correct? Or did you change your mind?
Oh, no, I've got plenty of questions. But if I could just weigh in too on the benefits of for-profits in terms of my own personal experience and my own educational journey. So I'm a University of Phoenix alum. did my undergraduate, finished my undergraduate with them in the very early days of the University of Phoenix in San Jose, California. Still staying in Northern California, my MBA is from the Keller Graduate School of Management, which is part of DeVry. Had a great experience there. And to me, one of the great benefits was the fact that my teachers were practicing professionals. You have a different term for them, I think, Chris, but for example, my accounting teacher was at DeVry, was on the faculty at UC Berkeley. And so, I had excellent instruction, and then went to a public institution for my PhD at Idaho State University. But so I'm a big fan of the benefits of these and the things that it made possible for me.
Tell them like it is.
So one of the reasons I was so excited about participating today is because a lot of the things that Champlain does are things that Ensign College does. We're very focused on career and skills-based education. And I wanted to talk about that, Joe, if that's okay. If we can get into
want, Bruce.
into what they do. But so I'm a huge believer that online education should be compelling and not just convenient. And so as you think about the things that are happening on campus with your career and skills-based education, I'd really be interested to know how you're designing for integrating skills application in the curriculum and the student experience in the online world, how you assess the skills acquisition of your students, and how those graduates are communicating the skills they're acquiring to potential employers. I just would like to know, what's the secret sauce of Champlain Online, and how are you doing that?
Yeah, well, thank you. So I definitely can provide you some background, but Champlain College has been around for 145 years, and it started, as a business college. And so you fast forward to today, we have two brands that run right alongside one another and complement one another. And that is our traditional programs. And then, of course, what I run, the online programs. And I feel like we share the same values. So we might have separate academic governance and programs and all of that, but we absolutely share the same value that we want to ensure that our students are career ready. And so what does that really mean? It's exactly like, Bruce, the questions you were talking about, is that we want to make sure that students, whether they're coming to school online or in the traditional setting, that they feel like they're acquiring the skills they can use immediately. So how do you do this? Well, our traditional side puts students into immediately the courses in their major. It's called an upside down curriculum. They provide them internships and they do international experiences so students can make sure that they can articulate what it is they're learning right into a work environment, even as a traditional age student, and then be able to articulate that to future employers once they're graduating. So then you take a look at the online side. We mirror a lot of the same things because we look and say that, as what you said, it's not just about accessibility. It's not just about access. It's about what are we providing to that student that's relevant. So taking and ensuring that the design of the class is focused on that student being able to use their work environment for their projects and assignments for class. And so we embed and make sure that the instructional design of the class is project-based learning. It's authentic learning. It's active learning. It's team learning, because then you're able to ensure these students feel confident that they can go back to their workplace and immediately start applying this relevant information. And I don't think it's just about when Champlain College Online students graduate. It's also what's happening while they're earning their degree, being able to give them kind of the smaller credentials, certificates along the way, so they can put that on their LinkedIn and be able to say, yes, I've earned competencies in this area. I now have a certificate in software development, while they're on their way to their degree. And I think that you measure that, which is really timely with an important topic in online higher ed right now, I think across all industries, but AI, right? Artificial intelligence, is that we have been very lucky to have an extremely strong e-learning team. And I feel like that's part of really our secret sauce here at Champlain of making students career ready, is that we've designed already curriculum to ensure that it is project-based, it is active learning. It's not just saying write a paper on the theories between team learning and group learning. It's really saying to the student, okay, you've read the theories on team learning and group learning, talk about what you're seeing in your organization. What is effective, what is not? Interview your supervisor and find out what they believe the organization is meeting the needs of and where there might be gaps. Do you agree with that assessment? Because why? As we talk about artificial intelligence, right? We're all worried that maybe students could, find an easier path by using AI, but instead by ensuring they have these authentic learning opportunities. I think that's really key. And then you have the artifacts from that, right? You have papers that you're capturing. You're capturing all these moments within discussion questions, threads as they communicate with one another, that they are learning those competencies and those objectives each week or within each course to be successful.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. I love that because it's so relevant for what employers are begging for from graduates today. Every spring I'm always interested in the things that employers say graduates can't do, and how vitally important it is that these skills get integrated into everything that a student experiences from the very beginning. So I'm just a huge fan of everything that you're doing, because I think it's the things that employers are saying they really want today.
Oh, thank you. But we're still learning, Bruce, because I will tell you, we're starting to see 12% of our new students coming and knocking on our door are under the age of 23. So it's asking us to start thinking differently too about ensuring we can keep authentic, active learning, project-based learning moving forward. So we're going to be partnering with an organization that is going to embed mini internships into our classes online that will ensure the students who don't have access to a work environment can still get opportunities to have that authentic learning.
Yeah, that's great.
Chris, let me ask you a quick question about structure, because you brought it up at the beginning when you were talking about government. Is the online division, or I don't know what it is it a division of Champlain College separately governed to where you have, where does the program live? Is it developed within an academic college? Is it developed within the online division? And therefore all of your governance is wrapped around your online division? Some schools have it to where they have both traditional and online programs and modalities built within a college. And so a dean of that college is going, okay, we're going to offer this online or offer this on ground. Even though this is online, we're going to try to do this, try to do that. And then there's schools that operate an online division completely separate with its own governance. How are you guys structured at Champlain?
So we do have separate governance. I have my own, in essence, provost, chief learning officer, who then has department chairs, business, technology, our liberal studies, marketing, and they develop, the curriculum for Champlain College Online. The wonderful thing about being one college still is that even though we might have formally separate academic governance, we are, for example, building a Bachelor's of Science in Game Development, which launches this spring, as well as a Bachelor's of Science in Interactive Game Design that will start next fall.
Fantastic.
We are working with our traditional partners in Champlain College, the traditional side, to collaborate, because why? They have done an amazing job with their game design program, and this is a real hallmark of what they do. So I feel like you're getting the best of both worlds, because we do have a different student and we do have different learning outcomes that we're often looking for someone who already has work experience or already is in the field. But at the same time, being able to collaborate. Cyber is another great area. We have phenomenal programs for cyber on the traditional side as well as on the online side. So they might be managed separately, but those academic leaders are always in communication and looking at ways part of our growth in the future is finding opportunities to even have more formal exchange, where students can go back and forth potentially, or at least they have the opportunity on the traditional side. If they're doing an internship or an international experience, maybe they're going to take some online courses with us in the future.
Are you on the same calendar system for both?
We actually we are aligned where we use the the start terms fall, spring, summer.
So standard.
We have the extra with the 6 entry points a year.
6 entry points, standard academic year. So you're
with
doing
modules,
what,
yeah.
16-week term to 8-week modules, something like that,
7
or some
weeks.
combination of that.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that matters too. If you're aligning online and on ground, if you're off schedule, if students move between one or the other, if they're not aligned, then you have financial aid issues and so on. So the design matters to get to scale, right? Anyway, I could go on all day on those details. Bruce, back over to you.
Yeah, those are all things that we're working with too, as we've we have an online world as well as our face-to-face world. We're also moving towards 7-week terms. So those are things that we're looking at. One of the questions I did have, and it sounds like students can't quite do it yet, was can they move back and forth between modalities? Can students have the choice of doing some things face-to-face, some things online, given life and sometimes it will be more convenient for students to sort of vote with their feet and say, I really need to go online for this term or this next period of time because of a variety of factors in their lives. Are they able to do that yet, or are you working towards something like that, Chris?
I think that goes back to Bruce, talking about collaboration, right, in higher ed and how we exchange ideas of best practices. That's a best practice that we want to move toward. My son is at University of Albany and having a phenomenal experience as a traditional student, but he's gifted with the ability to go back and forth. He can say, hey, I want 3 of my classes this time in person and 2 of them online. And so I do think, as we look at the future of higher ed in general, it's going to be important for all of us to find and meet that student where they're at. And that includes having the ability for our students to have more options. A student that wants to go home for the summer, and wants to continue in earning credits. It's a great opportunity to be able to do that. So I am definitely reaching out and learning about best practices from our colleagues, in the space, Bruce. And it's wonderful because I feel like it's going to set us up for enhancing that student experience.
Yeah. Are you doing anything with competency-based or credit for prior learning? That was something I was curious about.
Oh gosh, I can talk for hours, so I will try to be succinct on prior learning assessment. It is one of my favorite topics, transfer credit in general. So, we look at Champlain College Online, we identify ourselves, as career-focused, business and tech program-centric, transfer-friendly, and affordable. So the transfer-friendly is just part of our DNA. And so we're trying to enhance that even further now. So in order to do that, it goes back to, right, we meet our students where they're at. Most of our working students have a lot of credit that hasn't been articulated yet into a college transcript. They might bring to us, right, 2 or 3 other college experiences that we'll award credit for. But in addition, they have life experiences. And so we're trying to work to a point where we're going to be able to have the kind of experience that when someone knocks on our door, we can have a conversation with them about kind of probing, the background that they have and being able to talk to them and say, okay, so tell me a little bit about your life and work experiences, and asking those questions. Oh, you mentioned you're a real estate agent. Were you aware that that's worth 6 credit hours towards your degree already? You mentioned you're a native speaker to Spanish. Did you know you can take a CLEP test and earn 12 credits for that? So in addition to the 22 credits you told me you already have from your community college, I want you to start thinking that you're already getting close to 2 years of college by just having some of this prior learning and life skills, as well as opportunity to test out. And so we can have authentic conversations with them as a whole person to be able to say, okay, here's how we can articulate this for you. And one of the things that's really great about being a small institution right now is we can provide services such as for prior learning assessment. Most of the time we've made our students take a class. They pay for the 3 credit hour class, they put together a portfolio, right? Well, we've scrapped that, and we have our students advised at the beginning that if they have prior learning assessment, we will pair them with those experts in prior learning assessment who still might field out pieces to a subject matter expert, but can work with the student one-on-one without having to take a class in order to do it, and then apply those credits into their degree. So it speeds them to graduation and reduces the cost for them. But Kale has taught us, right? We know that if students take advantage of prior learning assessment, they will more likely retain and graduate. And so this goes back to also, we can help reduce student loan debt with prior learning assessment because we're helping them get to graduation faster, building their confidence and respecting them, again, meeting them where they're at.
Attention.
Are you ready to elevate your institution's marketing and enrollment strategies? Join the EdUp Experience podcast at the Insights EDU conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't miss out on this opportunity to hear from engaging speakers from industry-leading companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and higher ed leaders. Learn the latest marketing and enrollment strategies to grow your programs. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration.
Attention. Oh, yeah.
Join the movement to mobilize and revolutionize higher education by picking up your copy of Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education today. This book has been featured in Forbes, NPR, Harvard Business Review, CEO World Magazine, NBC News, CBS News, and Business Insider, among many others. Don't miss out on what today's highest college leaders have to say about the future of higher education. Pick up your copy on Amazon. It's a total
that's
shift,
fantastic.
Right? Yeah.
We choose
That's a beautiful
truth
thing.
over facts.
I want
So-
to put that in, hold on, Bruce. I want to just add one thing. It is a mind shift to do what you're saying to do. It's a mindset change, complete, right? Because if I am digging to try to find credit to award you, I am reducing what you pay the institution. I could very easily not dig that hard and say, well, this is just all the credits you're going to get, and so you got to take these credits, and you may think that's just the expectation. You have to shift your entire mindset to how much can I help this student move along faster, because I'm going to retain them better if I do, which is going to in turn help my institution in a multitude of ways. But you're talking about, you're back to your point of, I'm going to take the class, I'm going to pay $500 to see what PLA comes out. Whether they take my credit or not, I'm going to pay this $500 and that's just it. That is a very traditional way, and PLA isn't even a traditional concept. It's more progressive, but there's more you can do to take more credit. Sorry, Bruce, to interrupt, but it's
No,
mindset change.
I was just going to say, I love the strategy. It's a strategy of no credit left behind.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And really putting the student first and looking at what makes sense for them and doing exactly what you're doing. The idea of accelerating time to completion and giving them credit for what they've done and respecting what they've done. It's a brilliant strategy. I love the strategy. Really, it's fantastic what you're doing.
Awesome. And I think that speaks right back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Joe, when you asked me the question about tax status of a college, because if your mission is the best interest of the student, you're going to do that because you know they're going to be more likely to persist and graduate. And that's what we're all about, right? Which is educational attainment. We don't want to just bring students in. We want to build their courage, because as working students, by the time they knock on our door, right, they might have attended 2-3 institutions in the past and it wasn't successful. So they need their confidence boosted as well for them to start to really be able to believe they are able to complete a degree program. And so prior learning is just saying, we hear you, we respect you, and we can help you get to that, place that you want to be sooner.
It didn't exist before, though, I don't think, Chris, because if you go back in time to when you and I were coming up through that through for-profit ed, we recruited students. We recruited them. They didn't line up at the door, and if you turned them away, they went somewhere else, and that was okay because we didn't want you. No, we wanted everybody we could help, and that was I always tell my team there was a big difference between recruiting and admissions. I don't use the word admissions because admissions to me is paperwork. Like, I'm just going to have you fill out stuff and I'll process it. There's a big difference between recruiting a student and what it actually takes to recruit a customer. Now, as institutions are getting more you see enrollment declines, all of a sudden institutions that never recruited before are having to recruit because there just aren't any students lining up at the door. And so you see these things start to swirl now. We need more PLA. We need to scale online. We need to go after this adult student. But wait a minute, this adult student's got a 2.7 GPA, but 10 years of HR experience. Well, 2.7 GPA isn't good enough for our 3.0 program. And you go, who cares? Who cares about that GPA? What about 10 years of HR experience? So shifting the mindset to do what you're saying, it takes a whole different foundation. And a lot of universities aren't there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I go back to feeling very grateful to be at Champlain College online because we've had 30 years of doing this. And it was really interesting how all of our institutions, it's such a small world. I learned the most intriguing story that we got started because our president at the time, I believe his name was Roger Perry in the early 90s, went to a conference and heard University of Phoenix speaking about this new kind of concept of online. And he was so excited about it. He came back, and to one of the most, loyal lieutenants on the team, the exec team said, hey, we've got to make this happen. And so in 93, we started with online courses and eventually degrees in 95. But it's funny how the worlds connect. And then at University of Phoenix is where I learned any student that came to us over 90 credits, we were to recommend they go to Regents College, which fast forward became Excelsior College, Excelsior University today, because we knew we couldn't help them as well as the credit aggregation institutions could, which were Charter Oak, Thomas Edison, Empire State, and Excelsior College, because students could complete with them without having to do the 30 credit hour residency. So I feel like it's been embedded in every institution I've worked that as long as you focus on the best interest of the student, the success will follow for the school.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
So, Chris, can you talk a little bit about the faculty and who your faculty are, and do they see the world differently, the world of online education? Do they see it differently than the face-to-face faculty at Champlain? And I'd just be interested in the profiles of your faculty and how you recruit them.
Sure. So our faculty, I have had this treat over the summer of doing these one-on-ones with a slew of our faculty, because I feel like it's so important to hear from them about what we could do better, what we can enhance, what we need to continue doing, and really, what are the needs of our students as we contemplate, making improvements in the future. And so getting to know them and hear their stories, I think, I mentioned I've spent 14 years teaching online as well. We all agreed, right? It's so addictive because you have these adult students, right, that you learn as much from as you're imparting knowledge to them. And that's what I hear consistently, is that they are so motivated that even though they have day jobs, but they want to be these online facilitators because they gain so much from helping adult students move through their degree program. Giving back is how they often see it. They're inspired by the students who are first generation, a third of our students identify as a racial or ethnic minority, like all these students, and then the geographic diversity. Our institution has tremendous geographic diversity, even though we're so small. We only have 2,000 online students right now. And so they say it goes back to like, you can't replicate what we're doing in the online environment with that kind of diversity in a class that averages 12 students in a local classroom. Because when they teach locally, as great as the school is, most of those students are coming from that area. And as we know in our country, right, we need to be thinking about ways to bring people together, especially geographically, because of how we see the world, and know that that's a benefit. And so they inspire me because they say that they are learning significantly in the class too. They're passionate about what they do. They have the advanced degrees. And as you mentioned, Bruce, right, some of them are teaching at traditional schools, as their day job, but a lot of them are just working full time in the industry that they're now teaching for us. And that's hugely beneficial, as you mentioned, for career, support.
Absolutely.
Chris, I get the sense from you that even when you deliver bad news, somebody walks away not sure it was bad news because you have such a great delivery. Like, I feel like if you gave me bad news, I'd be walking away thanking you because you're so good at taking these challenges and making them sound like great opportunities, which is I think is a sign of an amazing leader. Because there's always faculty that think, oh, it's on ground better or online better. And it is about finding that common ground and that opportunity. Maybe it's growth of a program. Maybe, you know what, if you go online and you invest in online, your program will grow by X or by Y. If you don't, you're committing to a smaller footprint, right? And so that all matters in the end. But I want to just interrupt both of you. Bruce, I'm going to put you back on the hot seat for a sec. I've got a question for both of you. It's one of the most confusing questions in the entirety of higher education. I actually asked it on LinkedIn. I did a poll. I had a couple hundred vote. And it is this single question that I can't figure out. Hold on.
Attention.
There's a higher education word you may be familiar with. It's spelled, well, I'm not going to spell it because I'll probably spell it wrong, but it's pedagogy or pedagogy, depending on how you pronounce it. So my question to you is, how do you pronounce this word? And if it's pedagogy, is it pedagogical? And if it's pedagogy, is it pedagogical? Chris, I'm going to go to you first to get a ruling on this.
I always called it pedagogy, but
pedagogy and pedagogical or pedagogical?
I don't think I ever used the latter word, pedagogical. I didn't even know it was a word.
All right, Bruce.
Well, that's a deep philosophical question about how to pronounce those words.
Attention.
I use the word.
Dr. Bruce Cush, president of Ensign College, at the answer to this question.
I would say pedagogy and pedagogical. That's how I would do it.
See, you know, I feel like that's just very political answer of you, Bruce.
No, that's how I do it. I don't know. That's you know.
No one knows.
Maybe it's just a West Coast thing. I don't know.
The point is, no one actually knows the answer to this question.
Does anybody even really know what it is? Sometimes I wonder.
I don't know. In England, it's pedagogical, and in the U.S., it's pedagogical. Anyway, back to the regular episode here.
Attention.
There we go. Chris, just a little bit of a side, because I don't know the answer to all these higher ed terms. You know, it's confusing for students sometimes to be able to navigate our structures. You talk about student first, and one of the things I find fascinating to talk to people like you is, how do we define that? I have a colleague of mine here at Lindenwood, and he gave an example of Uber. You know, Uber anticipates your needs, right? But not to the point where it's super creepy if an Uber just pulls up next to you, but you didn't call them and they ask you to get in the car, right? That would be really anticipating your needs, but it would be weird. But when you need an Uber, no matter where you are, hypothetically speaking, of course, within a few minutes, you get the ride when you need it for the number of bags you have or the number of passengers you have. And so there's always somebody anticipating the need that you have. How do we anticipate the needs of learners, and what are their expectations changing now that AI is becoming a thing?
Yeah, so I think often what happens is, as we work with students, is they're knocking on our door. and we're having conversations as the enrollment advisor, as you're having conversations with the academic advisor, as soon as they're fully admitted, you're asking them those questions. How do we best support you? What does that look like for you? And so it kind of goes back to, you don't have to worry about being, I think you used the word creepy, with a student, because you're asking them, what did they need to persist? What would be most helpful? So we know how to reach out to them. Do they prefer text? Do they prefer a phone call? Do they want email communication? How often would they like for us to check in? Do they need reminders about registering, about applying for their new financial aid year? So I think it's meeting learners where they're at on a student service side by asking them what it is. But then also, I think it's academic integrity is meeting learners where they're at, right? Making sure that we are setting them up, as Bruce talked about, to be career relevant by getting feedback from stakeholders that are going to be important to them as they seek to enhance their career. Once they graduate with us, how are we going to ensure that they have that learning, that they'll feel confident and know that they have the skill sets to continue, being successful?
I like that. Bruce?
Yeah, I was having a conversation just this morning with our online vice president about this topic in general. And to borrow a concept from the late Clayton Christensen, the discussion that we had was around, what do our students and potential students hire us to do for them? And as we better understand that, I think it helps us make sure that we're designing programs and experiences that will solve the problems that they're trying to solve by getting an education.
And I just think that's a way to put it, Bruce.
Well,
how would they hire us? I mean, like they're a customer.
I know. It's a revolutionary way to think, I guess, isn't it? But that's in my DNA. I spent a couple of decades in business before coming into higher education. But I think the things that Chris, that you and your team are doing, the way that Champlain College is really meeting the needs of students is a remarkable thing in this day and age. And I just hope it bodes well for a long-term future for the school in a very positive way.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. We had one of our, all team meetings this morning, and we were talking about scale, our goals around growth of students. And, and I was just reiterating, it is not about the fact that we want to get to 15,000 students. It's about what we have to offer is an important enough value proposition that we know we can better students' lives. We know we can better the lives of their families. And so I really like what you said, Bruce, about thinking about from a student perspective, they're hiring us, and they're not just hiring us for that degree or that certificate, right? They're hiring us to prepare them for life. And so one of the initiatives that we're working to get better on, Bruce, most recently, is financial literacy for our students. Because we can look and we can say, we have a role as an institution to reduce the student loan debt. And we talked about, right, all the ways we could do that with transfer and prior learning, but it's also about just equipping them with information that if you come to school with us and you're here for 2 years, that would be $20,000 at Champlain College. If you don't pay interest while you're in school and you take the federal government's Title IV program 6 months after graduation, here's what your payment will look like. And then you can talk to them about, have you thought about, do you have any discretionary money, right, to put toward paying interest? Here's what your payment would look like. Have you thought about talking to your employer about tuition reimbursement, $52.50 a year they can often write off? That's what your payment would look like if you were able to negotiate with your employer, in exchange of maybe you give them a few extra years if they pay for part of your school. So seeing our students as whole people, that's what they need from us, especially our working students.
A lot of numbers in there, Chris.
You inspire.
You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Thank you for that. You rattled off $52.50, which of course is the tuition reimbursement rate, the write-off. IRS tax rate, right, to be able to offer tuition reimbursement from an employer to an employee. So there's a lot of numbers in there that people don't necessarily understand, especially when you go through financial aid and you start to look at payments. Students are more financially savvy now. So I think the expectation of how I am going to pay for this, how I can afford it, is ever present. And one of the differentiators between schools is how you're going to serve the student and give them the information they need so that they don't go elsewhere to get it. Because that's how you lose online students, right? They're very transient. If they're not getting served in that moment, they'll go find another online school and transfer those credits. And that's becoming more and more common. So you have to give your students a reason to stay. So I really like what you said there.
Yeah, and it puts them they're the ones in the driver's seat, right? So when I'm an academic advisor and my student has said to me, their goal is to get done as fast as possible, and take as little money as possible in loans, then I can be working with them. Remember, you told me, right? You know a language. Well, remember, we got to get you signed up for that CLEP test because the CLEP test, is only $95 versus a course with us, is $900, so you're constantly helping them get to where they wanted to go and providing them those tools. And as you said, Joe, right, you're meeting the student where they're at. What does that learner, we're anticipating those things most important to them and compelling for them to be able to finish.
Bruce, any more questions for Chris?
Well, I want to just congratulate you again. I think the things that you're doing to help students take responsibility for their educational path and really empowering them with the skills and things is it's remarkable, and it's unique in the world of higher education today. So, Joe, I think I'm out of questions. I just have congratulations.
That's okay. I've got two more questions for Chris, but I do want to remind the audience that Bruce, you said pedagogical and pedagogy. We're going to put that in a social media meme now and put it. No, we won't do that to you.
Okay.
But it is confusing. Anyway, Chris, final questions for you. We always we want to give every guest an opportunity to open mic. What else do you want to say about Champlain College?
That we are going to be learners just like our students. One of the things I love most about higher ed is the willingness to collaborate with one another. You can reach out, and I have monthlies with Southern New Hampshire, with University of Phoenix, with Colorado Tech, with Charter Oak. I mean, all these amazing institutions that I so admire. And I learn from them so I can keep making my student experience better. So I just want my students to know we're on the same path as you are. And our goal is to keep enhancing what we're doing so we can lead you to your goal of, educational attainment.
And probably the most important question, especially for a VP of a college that's online, Champlain College Online, what do you see for the future of higher education, Chris?
Much more seamless pathways. So that is recognizing we'll have a diversity of age of students. We're going to see more and more of those 18, 19-year-olds we talked about, even in online. But as you both mentioned, there will be a need for all institutions to mix modalities in the future to be able to meet the needs of students. I think from working with students from high school all the way through retired, right? That we can be lifelong learning partners to our students, to our employers who are looking to us to prepare the workforce, to other stakeholders like government, because as we know, right, an educated citizenry means that there's more engagement in communities and being able to give back. So I think it's just continued collaboration and creating more seamless pathways for students will happen.
Well, I got to tell you guys, I very much enjoyed this episode with two other business minds here working in higher education for the students. And Bruce, I am going to steal what did the student hire us to do? Because it is it helps you shift your thinking when you think of it in that way. So I appreciate that from you. Of course, now one of my favorite guest co-hosts coming on. Hopefully, Elvin will get him on more. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the president of Ensign College. He's the one and only Dr. Bruce Cush. Bruce,
Thanks.
you know what this means now? This means that I have to send you the EdUp co-hosting coffee mug. So I'll be asking for your address.
Okay, perfect.
And
Perfect.
it's gonna go right there on top of that printer, so we could see it every other time you.
It'll be right there. It'll be right there.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, your guest today, here she is. She's Chris Montagnino. She is the vice president of Champlain College Online. Chris, wait for the applause to stop. I know it takes a little bit. How did you feel about your EdUp experience today?
I loved it. Joe, Bruce, it was just engaging. It was fantastic. Two other people just extremely passionate about making a difference. And online higher ed, I could do this all the time.
You know, this is when I said earlier that I love the way you deliver things. You know, Bruce's questions weren't as good as mine, but you made him feel like they were in that moment. Thank you, Chris.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
Get out of here, Bruce. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Oh, yeah.
Attention higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. We are taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us at Insights EDU on February 20th to 22nd, 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. Gain insight into the latest higher education trends and cutting-edge marketing strategies that'll take your institution's enrollment to a whole new level. This is your opportunity to connect with higher education leaders and marketing experts from across the country. Comprehensive presentations, engaging panel discussions, and more. Insights EDU will equip you to position your institution for growth. Register now at insightsedu.com and use the code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Can you afford to miss this conference?
I don't think so. Attention.
Forbes called commencement the beginning of a new era in higher education, a dispensable touch point for what's being said in, about, and around higher education now. Don't miss the insights from 125 college and university presidents about what the future of higher education holds. Pick up your copy of Commencement on Amazon today.